Susan Motika will be moderating this session. This session is basically different individuals and organizations that are participating in local food movements, but more importantly, farm to school. And they're going to share some stories. Susan?
Thanks, Julia. What I thought was really intriguing about this panel, we're here about farm to school, but as I was talking about in the legal and policy section before, we really are looking at expanding healthy food and local producers to institutions. So this particular panel is dealing with farm to school and beyond, with people that are from different institutions, have different perspectives, and I think this is really good, cutting edge information and connections that we can build, not just in terms of networking, but in understanding that complex system to get local food to tables, institutions, and schools. So with that, let me begin. Each of our panelists is going to do a brief 3-minute introduction. You know, who are they, where they work, and how farm to school, farm to institution fits in their work and what their mission is briefly. And then we're going to have a question and answer session, more free-flowing. So why don't we begin with John?
My name is John Azula, and I'm the curator of birds at the Denver Zoo. Kind of a unique organization to be talking today, but it shares a lot of the same interests and concerns that you have as we're talking in today's workshop. I would say about 5 years ago, the Denver Zoo started to examine its business practices, and we wanted to try to align our business practices in the way that we would have sustainable of our natural resources and all our resources. And so various aspects of our business, we were looking at office supply procurement as we design new exhibits, as our Toyota Elephant Passage will be opening on June 1st. Several of the buildings and the exhibits are LEED certified. We are looking to create our own energy through gasification and waste disposal through human waste and animal waste, and that hopefully will come online in the latter part of this year. But my responsibility, along with being the curator of birds, is I oversee the animal commissary. And the animal commissary and the animal food budget accounts for $700,000 of our annual budget. It's significant. And I was looking at what we could do to look at how we procure our produce, as well as also our hay and grains. But particularly, we were looking at produce. And we were looking, probably 2-3 years ago, we established a relationship with an apple grower on the western slope. And we ended up procuring for about 4 or 5 months of the year local Colorado-grown apples, and that was happening, and it was something we wanted to expand on. And as I went along and I was trying to network with people, looking at local farmers markets, I was looking and talking to a variety of people, and I'm sure I emailed Julia at some point, and that began a really worthwhile relationship with Julia and Real Foods Colorado. This last year was our pilot program with the help of Julia, looking at our local farms and getting some of our produce from local farmers. We're also looking to expand that this next year in our second year and committing to local farmers a certain amount of produce that we will use for zoo animals. And a lot of our criteria are the same as yours. When you look at great apes, orangutans, and gorillas, they have the same sort of finicky diets that we may have, but we have to have the same high-quality foods. And so that's our standard. And so this last year I felt was really successful, and now we're really branching off to take off and make this next year even more successful. We're also looking at, as that was local farms to zoo program, we're actually looking at schools to zoo programs. With Andrew's help, we're just in the process of doing a pilot study, hopefully this year, where we're looking and making relationships with DPS schools in the local area around the Denver Zoo, and looking at elementary school gardens, and looking, as they've provided at times foods for their cafeterias, also looking for them to provide food for the zoo animals. And so it's pretty exciting. Again, it's just in the beginning stages, and we hope to really grow this with the cooperation of our local farms. And again, it's also a big benefit because we're supporting our local economy, which is also very critical in today's environment.
Thank you, John. Jim Dyer.
Well, good morning. Seems like afternoon. Jim Dyer from far southwestern Colorado, outside of Durango. We raise sheep and wool, chicken and eggs, and produce on a very small scale. We're water limited. Most of that's for our own use, but wool is our cash crop. Being a sheep farmer, you need some other income, as you would suspect. So I work with a variety of nonprofits to coordinate the Southwest Marketing Network and the Healthy Community Food Systems. And we've been working on supporting Farm to School for about 10 years on several different levels. I work at the national level on the advisory board for the National Farm to School Network, so that allows me to learn from a lot of other states. I'm the point person for that group for Colorado, so if you have questions about the network, feel free to ask. On the regional level, the Southwest Market Network tries to connect farm to school efforts in the four corner states plus Wyoming. We have a Wyoming representative here, I think. And on the state level, I work with Wendy and Lynn and Lidwell and a variety of others, but specifically with Wendy and Lynn with Colorado Farm to School Project, we'll call it at this point. It's been a pleasure since 2005 to have a local farm to school effort in La Plata County, working with Krista, Ken Pata from the Master Schools and other schools. So we've been doing it for some time. I think it has been a pleasure to see this come together. Most recently, as Lisa pointed out, I had the pleasure to work on the school food farm to school primer, as well as some regional groups. Southwest Colorado, we had a regional convening in that area, as well as in the Pikes Peak area. We learned an enormous amount from Rick and Craig and other people and Mike in that effort. And then we also worked in the North Fork Valley and Crested Butte, bringing a couple groups together. So we're looking at these sorts of models, and we'll talk about this later, as how to network people most effectively. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Krista.
I'm Krista Duran from Durango Public Schools. And Durango, we have 4,300 students and I serve about 2,400 meals per day. And going back to some of our conversation about funding through free and reduced, our free and reduced is about 32%, so significantly less than some of those larger districts. We started Farm to School about 6 years ago, or a little bit before that, but I've been involved for 6 years. And we started small, putting foods from local farmers on salad bars in small amounts. And then we were able to purchase beef, local beef for our schools, which made a huge impact. So we've been increasing over time the amount of local foods that we've been able to put in our program, to the point where we've been able to serve local meals to all of our students on certain menu days. So everything offered has been local, and then other meal days where every student has access to local food, whether it's just a vegetable or whether it's beef. So we have certain menu days where every child gets that local meal. This fall we served organic apples, peaches, and pears to all of our students all of September and first 2 weeks of October, so every child had access to that. We probably, this year, we'll spend about $20,000 in beef and about $15,000 on produce. So that's been growing each year. We've seen a significant increase recently from our local farmers, and we've also had more variety of food from our farmers available, and our purchases have been able to go longer into the season. So in Southwest, we have a really short growing season, but some of our farmers now have that capability to store root crops, so we've actually been able to serve them longer than we ever have, which has been great. We are collaborating currently with 4 other school districts to create a farm to school bid, which we're going to share later at one of the workshops. I did a conference in November based on the need for our farmers to be educated about that bid process, about farm food safety and school food safety, and how to answer a school bid, and then followed that conference with a pre-bid conference that we answered more questions for them. And we'll be sharing that collaborative bid later, and so we're kind of waiting now to see after we send that out what our farm to school program will start to look like.
My name is Andrew Noah. Many of you know me with many different hats on. Along with Krista and Susan and several other people in the audience, I sit on the Colorado Farm School Task Force. I represent parent groups on that task force. I am a new partner with Julia at Real Food Colorado, so you'll be seeing me in that capacity a lot. But for the next couple minutes, I'm going to wear my Slow Food Denver hat and describe how Slow Food Denver, as a grassroots community group, has been a community partner with Denver Public Schools in farm to school activities. 10 years ago, our engagement in Denver Public Schools started with our school garden program. We call it the Seed to Table program. Started at 4 elementary schools in Denver Public Schools, and now we're in over 45 schools with gardens, and with our partners, Denver Urban Gardens, there are over 61 school gardens in Denver Public Schools where kids are growing food and using that food to learn how to eat better. We call it taste education. We are putting that food into the cafeteria for the past 2 years. And we also set up farmers markets on school grounds so the kids can sell the food to the community. Many of these schools in Denver being in food deserts. So perhaps the only access these neighborhoods have to local grown produce. About 3 years ago, Slow Food Denver was formally invited to participate with the Food and Nutrition Department in their farm to school efforts to get local products into the school district. We help them overcome many of the challenges districts have getting local produce, primarily being the people on the ground, helping to identify these producers and processors that could support the school district. Food service staff don't have the time to be going across the state of Colorado making those linkages and such, so we introduce them to different producers. Mike Palicrate's here in the room, has been working at Denver Public Schools. Shane Milberger, also we visited his farm to look at possibilities for Denver Public Schools. I saw Marco here earlier from Ready Foods. I think he's gone, but we introduced Marco and DPS together, and Marco's been supporting Denver Public Schools with some specialty processing of products that the DPS kitchens are not ready to handle. We've also helped DPS develop protocols. I described the garden cafeteria program where the kids are putting fresh produce from the school gardens into the cafeteria. While that program needed protocols developed, and we worked with the Denver Department of Health and Environment to develop those protocols so the kids could harvest that food safely and could go in the cafeteria. So as a district partner, we try to meet many of the needs of a district that they can't staff right now, and that with our connections in the community, we can support them.
Hello, I'm sorry. My name is Andrew Glenn, and I work for the Weld County Department of Public Health and Environment. The program that I work for is called Healthy Well 2020, and every time I talk to people, I have to explain I'm the happy friend side of the health department. We're not here to, it's not a raid. Please feel free to talk to me. We have the Healthy Well 2020 program is a grant-funded program. We're funded with through the Health Foundation and from a Public Health and Health Services block grant. We're primarily an obesity prevention program, and through that our goals are to increase healthy food access, increase health education, and promote physical activity within the county. We have a lot of projects that we're working on towards those ends. Primarily, we've got a very successful healthy food retail program. We've got 3 projects on the ground in communities that we've identified as being food desert communities with limited food access. We also have a school and community garden program. We funded 20 community gardens last year and brought in 15,000 pounds of food. Over half of that was donated to directly to food banks or food pantries within Weld County. We also have a farmers market program where we're working with the town of Milliken to help them develop their farmers market. We're also a supporter of the Greeley Farmers Market. And then through this process, we are looking to increase addressing the environmental issues that lead to food access issues and overall impact health. Through that, we identified a food hub project as something that we want to work on. I'll hurry. And so, as Julia alluded to earlier, the project has kind of four main components that we're looking at. And as a health department, the health department doesn't operate food hubs, but what we do is we can provide technical assistance and support for food hub opportunities to work with farm to school and that sort of thing. And so our food hub project, Weld County Food Hub Project as we're calling it, has a post-harvest schooling component that will help farmers be able to break crops in and get them cool. Also, food safety, we're working with Julie on the food safety workshops. We've also developed a blueprint for our producers to follow in Weld County to really help them navigate kind of the morass of red tape and make getting food safety plans in place something that's very user-friendly and easy, hopefully. And then the general liability insurance, which is also a big issue. We're researching on how to address that. And then a real quick plug, we're working on a food hub advisory panel, and so if we'd like to have people, producers and other people in the food industry, purchasers, distributors, whoever, food banks especially, please come see me after this because we're putting that panel together right now to help us guide this project as we develop it.
Hi, my name is Karen McManus. I've been farming in Colorado for a little over 20 years. As Jeremy mentioned earlier, I was one of the originators of the Farm to School program in Greeley with Mona Martinez-Brach. I'm also growing produce for the animals at the zoo, which was really wonderful last year. That was one of my favorite accounts. I started the Farm to School program from a little 1 acre operation, and I now am on staff with Full Circle Farms in Longmont, and we are an 1,100 acre operation. It's a mid-sized farm. We're growing produce, certified organic produce on 250 acres of those, and we sell to the St. Vrain School District. And really my role is to continue to get other farmers in the state to sign on and participate in farm to school programs. It doesn't matter how small, how big, you are never ever expected to be able to provide all that food to one school district, and I am always encouraging more farmers to get on board.
Good morning, my name is Mike Kroll with Montrose Memorial Hospital. I've been there for a few years, and I think the one thing that I missed the most was the farmers knocking on my back door and offering me produce. So we started developing relationships with farmers. I wanted to know my farmer. I come from a family of farmers, other than my father, who was the one who skipped that generation. We started building relationships with farmers. They were my friends, they were my neighbors. My backyard neighbor happens to produce 40 dozen ear corn for me every spring, or I'm sorry, every fall, and we process it, we put it away for the winter. We're very much in the mindset of buying whole animals, whether it be hogs, steer. I'll guarantee that I'll buy 7 steer here come the spring harvest. How many producers are out there right now, can I ask? I just want to say thank you to every one of you, because without you, I can't do what I'm doing. Okay? Thank you. Every egg that comes to my door is a shell egg from 2 different distributors, or 2 different farmers. Almost there, aren't there? My apologies. I didn't realize 3 minutes was the time limit. So. But anyway, yeah, I'm available for questions. Honestly, guys, it's just the right thing to do, and that's what we're all trying to do up there, is make sure that each one of our communities gets our own food on our plate in a smaller case scenario. If we have to go broader, because I'm feeding 700 people a day, I know I can't just do it locally. I need the larger suppliers as well. But I think every one of us can pick and choose how we can succeed to provide sustainability to our own individual economic situation.
Great, thank you, Mike. So, yeah, let's give them a hand for their introductions. What I'm going to do now is direct some questions to panel members, and then we'll still have enough time for questions from the audience. So the first thing that I think is intriguing is we were mentioning the multidisciplinary networks and partnerships you need to have for farm to school to be successful. So for John and Andrew and Mike, where you sit in your institutions, your bosses may look at this and go, wait a minute, food hub, feeding the gorillas fresh produce and things. This is a little bit different. What do you do, and in the hospital situation as well, to be persuasive, to share with your institutions that this is the right direction to go in? So any of you want to take that?
It began for us about 5 years ago, and it took some discussions, but I didn't really have to go over a lot of hurdles to do this. I started to look at, again, local sources for produce, and we had used a variety of regular produce distributors that most restaurants in the Denver area use, and other places. And what we came to find out was that the quality of produce that we were getting for the zoo animals was actually a B grade quality. It wasn't the A grade quality. And so as we began to examine and look at the quality, certainly we could get a much better quality and just a little bit higher price for that. But what we've actually found was that the higher quality produce, we have to be a lot more efficient with it. We have to, again, make sure that we're rotating our stock, but also making sure that we're not over-ordering and making sure that we're more efficient with it. And with that, we've actually been able to maintain our same budget amounts by just being more critical of how we use it, how we store it, and where it's coming from. And then, of course, it being a local source, we're then, again, supporting the local economy. So it hasn't been that much of a struggle for us, and for me in particular, to kind of be that, that advocate for a local farms. We're right now, like I said, working with Andrew, hopefully this year, in regards to local schools with their elementary school gardens, providing some animal food as well. That's just in the beginning stages, but we're excited about that as well. So it hasn't been as much of a hurdle as I thought it would be. And again, we've been able to keep our budget pretty much not the same, aside from just regular, increase in overall cost for everybody and for everything. But it hasn't been really that much of an obstacle.
Thanks, John. Mike, take that question next.
Wasn't hard at all. My boss's husband owns a farm, ranch, and supply company. Now, Montrose is a relatively small community. It's ag-based, it's ranching-based, and there's a lot going on over there in terms of being able to produce and purchase locally. So, based on the 45,000 people in the county, you can relate to that. We all know each other reasonably well. We know who's producing and who's producing really well, who's going to let us on their farm to say hi, and those who don't let us on the farm, we're probably not going to visit, but it is relatively easy.
So, Andrew, if you could talk about the change in public health culture. What have you seen? What convincing have you had to do with your institution or not?
It hasn't taken a whole lot of convincing. It's when you can show that there's a true economic benefit, and in a county that's so agricultural heavy as Weld County, our commissioners were very much on board with anything that can promote and enhance agricultural production in Weld County, as well as increasing health. These are both issues that they're very much interested in, and so it hasn't been a hard sell.
That's great. Well, let's turn to Jim Dyer. He was mentioning the community and regional connections and participation. Jim, what do you see the challenges and opportunities ahead on that?
Well, this is the thing that strikes me is we've got great models of how to take those first very significant, perhaps small steps in farm to school, whether it be on getting more food into the school meals or the gardening and other local food education. And we've got champions all around here, around the food service directors, people championing gardens, and we have resources out there. So I think we made great strides, just looking in the past year since this conference was held a year ago. Great strides there. What concerns me now a bit is how do we, if we've got a program going, take those small steps, how do we ramp it up so it's a significant amount of food and or education? How do we make sure that we have those wider benefits of farm school accruing to the whole community? So we're not just talking about an island of healthy food and perhaps healthy activity at the schools, but it's throughout the community, because that's where the kids are going to be living the rest of their lives. And then find how to sustain these things over the long term. What if we lose that garden coordinator? What if we lose that food service director or that friendly administrator? So how do we sustain these things? I think it comes to network on the community level as well as the regional level. A very helpful self-assessment that I found from the Vermont feed folks in one of their publications really guides you to that. It asks you, for example, in the area of food, are you getting local food into your cafeteria? Sure. Does the whole food service staff understand where that food came from and how to treat it? Sure. Does the administration really understand farm to school? Maybe. Yeah. Right? Does the whole community really understand that? If they may be in favor of it, then they say, keep up the good work, but are they engaged in it? The same thing with gardens. Do you have a garden? Sure. Do you have more than one person keeping that garden going? Okay. Maybe. Is there a good support to take care of that garden in the summertime? Maybe. So it's that sort of thing where you need to have that full community involvement. So farm to school is a part of the whole community, local food and healthy activity effort. So I think that's why I'm looking for models. And I work specifically in the smaller and more rural schools. And they are certainly different. But I'm looking for models for that community support to build those robust systems that can last over time. And we're also looking at, as we mentioned before, at those regional efforts that can help, especially with small scale and rural schools, have a collective voice about state processes and policies to perhaps access that financial and technical assistance that might not be readily available to a small school, and for that peer networking, which is essential. So those are some of the things that
Thank you, Jim. So Krista, you were mentioning the bid process and some opportunities ahead with that. If you could give us a little bit more context about that and the opportunities ahead with that.
So we collaborated with 4 other districts to write the farm to school bid. So that is going to determine what our farm to school program is going to look like for next school year. And in order to get to that process, we had to look at educating our local farmers. We're small school districts and small farms. Most of our farms are under 20 acres. So we could write the best bid ever and send it out, but without the education process for our farmers, they wouldn't answer it. So we did the conference in November, and that was based on farm food safety, school food safety, how to answer a bid. I wrote a food safety assessment based on good agricultural practice, which we allowed all of our local farmers to give input into what that final product would look like, which is something that they're going to have to answer as part of our bid. So there was a whole education process, getting both sides speaking the same language. We came up with a glossary of terms so they could understand the wording of the bid, how to answer the bid, the pre-bid conference, all those things so that they would be able to participate. And I don't think without the education piece and without reaching out to them and without us understanding their side as well as them understanding ours, I don't think that we would have been able to get much of a response. So far it's looking like we're going to have more farmers participating than we ever had based on the conference and the response to the pre-bid.
Great, congratulations. Andy, question for you. You've been around EPS, school food reform, a long time. If you could look ahead, have a crystal ball, 3 to 5 years, what would look different in your imagination? What would you like to see?
Well, I don't have to imagine it because we're seeing some great progress happening right now. Julia alluded to a project that we're calling the DPS School Farm Project. And this project is involving lots of different partners, some of them in the room today. We have the Agriburbia as a farm group with us today. We have University of Colorado Denver as our partner. Colorado Health Foundation is funding a feasibility study right now for this. We're looking at how can DPS use their land differently to support farm to school. Denver Public Schools is the largest landowner in the county of Denver. And we've done a GIS mapping project in which we've identified 50 to 60 acres on DPS that is currently underutilized. And it's costing the district money to water and maintain this grass or whatever condition it is now. And so we're doing a study in which we're looking using those 50 acres, how much food could we grow for the district to be used in the cafeterias? How much food can be grown fresh and to be used right away? And how much food could be grown and then put up? And we're looking at freezing this food and storing it to use in the winter months. And while we're still working on those projections for this feasibility study, it is looking like we probably have enough land to account for around 40% of DPS's annual needs in both fresh and frozen products. And so and we're going to take these numbers and some of these costs can hopefully be approved by the voters in a November 2012 school bond issue. And then working with our partners like the Colorado Health Foundation is look at how we can develop this land and the structures around it, like a food hub, like a processing center, like improvements in the kitchens to handle all this fresh food. So to answer your question now, Susan, 3 to 5 years from now, I see DPS growing food on their grounds and processing it and serving it to the kids almost year round.
Thank you. So Karen, what do you think your biggest barrier to accelerating development and growth in your work is?
Boy, there's so few barriers anymore. If you had asked me that question several years ago, I could have answered it better. But I think the biggest challenge, if you will, is to get more producers to the table. One of the things that I would say that has knocked down some of the barriers, if I can talk to that, are these pre-bid conferences that Jeremy was talking about before. Those have been a wealth of information for producers. They share all kinds of wonderful information with us so that we don't have to come up with pricing and such. They share information about what they are currently paying and how much they buy and all of that. So we're sitting at the table on a much better even playing field these days. Susan, I don't think there's any barriers. I really don't.
I'm trying to stir it up a little with the barriers, and everyone's like, no, things are going well. Let's turn it to questions for the audience. We have time for questions from the audience. If we could get some people to help with the mics.
Questions?
This is just a question for Andrew from Slow Food. I was just wondering who is going to be growing that food for you on that acreage in the DPS school system?
So this project will certainly be ramped. We've got about 5 acres under cultivation for this coming up year. One of those farms, roughly an acre, is being grown by a small urban agricultural group called Sprout City Farms. They're at one school, several young people doing it. The other, 3+ acres is going to be done by Agriburbia. Jen, I apologize if I do this wrong, but basically a contract farming group. Yeah, thank you, Jen. But as this grows, that process will be put out to bid. It's going to be a contract for farming service, and we'll put that out to bid, and farmers can respond to it. And exactly how that contract looks is what we're developing right now. We're working with a DU law student that is looking at all the legal issues around contract farming on school grounds using federal money to buy seeds and all that stuff that the food service folks have to deal with. So it's not clearly defined yet, but It could be a number of farmers farming that site, those sites.
Other questions?
Questions?
Hi, my question is a little bit more about the ideals of farming that you're looking at. There's a lot of talk about local food, and it's been stressed on local and healthy. I'm wondering if there's been thought put into the ideas of permaculture, to improving the land, and into like what sort of processes you envision as shifting the dynamic away from just sucking resources out of the land versus investing into the land.
Well, I think perhaps Andy could talk about that on a specific one, but I would agree with you. I think the direction you're going, we not only need to be looking at healthy food and local food that's sustainably produced. And I think that's the bottom line. And sometimes that gets lost in the conversation. It's subtly in there when we talk about local, and it's certainly involved when we talk about healthy, but I think we have to talk about the farm practices in terms of wildlife, climate, soil erosion, and the whole bit. I don't know if that gets part of it, but perhaps Andy can talk to the nature of the gardens, whether they're doing permaculture or permanent.
So in the school gardens, we certainly teach reusable and sustainable methods. We do a lot of composting of all the organic material on the school grounds. The school garden that I maintain, we rake 95% of the leaves that fall down with the kids in the fall as part of their PE class, and that gets worked back into compost that's fed back into the gardens. I do have a couple school sites that are specifically doing permaculture techniques. Admittedly, we in Slow Food need to bring more experts in on that to teach our garden leaders how to do that. It hasn't been a major focus, but I myself am playing with a 20 by 20 permaculture plot at one of my school sites, just to experience it. I've never done it before myself. On the farm site, I know Agaburbia plans on leaving 25% of the land not under production, so that we can build up the soils using cover crops and other methods. So when we look at all that land, at any one given time, 25% will be fallow, so to rebuild the soils and such. So we're balancing that, the economic model of producing the food as well as the sustainable model of maintaining the land. And we're probably not perfect, but it's definitely under consideration.
Other questions?
Behind you, Julia.
Hi, this question is for Karen. I'm just wondering, I think you're such a great representative, you do so much wonderful work with Farm to School. And I've worked with a couple producers in different capacities, both of which happen to think that Farm to School is kind of a crazy idea, mostly financially. And so I'm wondering how you work with other producers to kind of even show them facts that they're misinformed about, or just help them to think differently about becoming part of that movement.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the reason that we're all in this room is because we want our children to eat healthy food. I am a parent of a Poudre School District child. I farm in Boulder County, selling to the Longmont School District, and I helped start the Greeley School District with their program. I think that it's really important, first of all, to look at the evolving way in which Farm to School has changed over the years. When we first started, it was a bid system on a weekly basis, and that did scare farmers very much because you could plant your crop and you could be outbid the next week. And we went back to the table year after year and talked with the nutrition service directors that are involved and educated them on what that means to a farmer. It's completely different now, at least in the programs that I've been working in, and I think around the state. When you get a commitment from a school district, you're getting a commitment for weeks worth of a product. So you no longer have to worry about being underbid or undercut on a weekly basis. You can plan your crops accordingly. And in my mind, it's really important to diverse as a farmer. I know that some farms believe in just the CSA program or just farmers markets. In my mind, that's not the safest business model. And so selling to school districts is another avenue to create a new customer. And we need to also remember that not only are the kiddos eating that food, but the teachers are coming down and eating, the parents are coming into the schools, and the school districts have done an amazing job of marketing for us producers. And so when you go into some of the schools that are having farm-to-school programs happening, you see banners and posters, and it's a great marketing tool. The other thing is I can say that we sell at farmers markets, and when word gets out in the community that we're also selling farm-to-school, people want to come buy from us. They think that's very cool. And the people that work in our fields, when I let them know that a lot of their children go to the local schools. So when I let them know that the hard work that they're doing is going back to the schools for that food to end up on their children's plates, they take a much stronger responsibility and really are excited to be growing the food for us. I think it's a win-win all the way around. And I am the eternal optimist.
So any questions from that side of the room? Okay, great.
There's been a lot of great talk about produce, fresh produce. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. But there's a lot of other local foods in Colorado, and whether it's zoos or hospitals or school districts, what gains and or not gains have happened in some of these other categories?
I can mention, well, we do local beef, but we also do other products from farmers. So we have a farmer that grows and mills his own wheat. So we use, and we can get that year round, so we use that flour in all of our baked goods. But he also produces a product that's a pancake mix. So all of our kitchens make local pancakes for breakfast. And we've done some great promotions around that breakfast and had parents and staff and the farmer come and teach the kids about what whole grains are. And so we do a lot of education as well by bringing farmers into the school programs. So that's just one example of a product other than produce.
In Denver Public Schools, we've also gotten into beef, thanks to Mike Calcraig. We've done some beef, and they actually did a bison purchase last year, ground bison for some chili for Colorado Proud Day. It's been a bit of a challenge this year for the Colorado meats because of the increase in prices, and it's a challenge to the budget. So I think there's unfortunately a little less purchasing going on this year, but there's still some beef and beef purchasing going on. DPS also buys all their mozzarella cheese that they need for their pizzas locally, Leprino in Denver. And for a long time, we've been getting their milk locally. The last numbers I saw, the last school year, 2010-2011, DPS purchased $1.8 million worth of local products across the fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, as well as some of the processed items that Ready Foods has done for DPS also.
Let's see. All my pork product is local. Like I said earlier, 7 steer a year. When we get into tortillas, we've got a local tortilla producer nearby. I've got at least 2 farmers knocking on my door to plant for me this year, in addition to the 4. When we talk, we mentioned grains and stuff like that. I know that there's a young lady back there, her daughter very much so wants to be planting artichokes for me apparently this summer. And I was asked by Julia to mention that I think some of what we've done at our facility has generated a lot of talk about the community. I've got 35% at least of my sales coming from off-the-street people. And when we talk about people wanting to walk into a hospital without lunch or breakfast or dinner, I think you're seeing a resounding level of support within the community to know that their neighbors and your neighbors are putting food on their table right there at that facility. So it definitely says something about a community engaged effort.
Thank you, Mike. And let's give our panel of innovators a big hand. And an announcement from Julia.
I wanted Mike to mention that his hospital restaurant, Lobby Grill, has become the place to eat, because I felt that a lot, especially some of the questions about what kind of impact does institutions have when they start sourcing locally, and that is a very great example of it. It's not just the trickle-down effect that when you bring local foods into schools, it's the fact that you start bringing an entire community into one place that I don't think anybody really thinks about going to eat when you go out to eat. And they're going there because not only is it great food, but because of the fact that it's their neighbors that grow the food. And I think that epitomizes to many extent why farm to school or farm to institution local foods is such an important part, because it is about bringing a community together. It's about self-sustaining, reinvestment. And I think Mike's story is a terrific story, because he did this pretty much of a gumption. You know, he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do it. And that's where it starts. It takes a leader. So thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Susan Motica, for moderating so wonderfully.